Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life.
Imagine waking up and you're just floating 3 feet above your bed.
It's completely weightless.
Right. Your phone, your keys, that heavy oak dresser you have, they are all just drifting around the bedroom like you are suddenly underwater.
It's a terrifying image.
And it gets worse. You manage to look out the window, and cars are literally lifting off the highway. Massive ancient trees are just being pulled up out of the ground, roots and all.
Yeah, just total chaos.
Exactly. And people on the street are desperately trying to grab onto anything that's bolted to the pavement because you have exactly 7 seconds. That is how long you have before gravity slams back and everything and everyone who didn't find an anchor simply falls.
Yeah, it's a chilling concept.
So today is May 4th, 2026, which means we are just months away from August 12th, 2026. The exact date this apocalyptic clock is supposed to run out, according to this viral leaked document dubbed Project Anchor.
Which has just completely taken over the internet.
It really has.
Yeah.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this massive viral phenomenon. We are going to dissect this terrifying fictional narrative that gripped the world. We'll explore the real and honestly baffling physics of gravity that made the hoax so believable, and dive into the deeply classified, very real history of anti-gravity research.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, let's unpack this because the source material blends this sci-fi horror with actual scientific mysteries, and I'm just so excited to get into it.
Yeah, and the best hoaxes are always built on a foundation of genuine scientific uncertainty. That is what makes them stick.
Exactly. So let's talk about the fictional premise of Project Anchor first. This document started circulating on encrypted channels back in December 2025.
Right, on Telegram, Signal, places like that.
And it claimed there was an $89 billion budget to prepare for this. They called it a gravitational discontinuity event. And it was supposedly caused by 2 black holes that collided 1.3 billion light years away.
Which is a very specific, very scientific-sounding detail.
Right. And the document claimed this gravitational wave was focused directly at Earth by an 800-light-year-long dark matter filament. The analogy they used in the hoax, which I thought was kind of brilliant, was a kid with a magnifying glass burning ants.
Yeah, it's a great visual.
Just focusing all that energy right onto our planet. And the narrative details were so dramatic, like they had these doomed whistleblowers.
Right, the scientists who figured it out.
Yeah, Dr. Thomas Webb, who supposedly vanished after his LEGO data was retracted.
And Dr. Maley Park at MIT, who died in a mysterious car crash.
Right, classic conspiracy thriller stuff. And then there were the chilling protocols. Protocol Alpha was basically like no public disclosure whatsoever.
Keep the public in the dark.
Exactly. Protocol Beta was expanding deep underground bunkers like Mount Weather. Protocol Gamma involved retrofitting infrastructure with these massive tether systems.
And then there was Protocol Delta.
Oh man, Protocol Delta, accepting 800 to 900 million deaths as, quote, acceptable losses. That is just so grim.
It is. It really plays into that fear of the elite abandoning the rest of us.
Totally. And the aftermath I describe is horrifying. The story of Colonel Price deleting his own brother's name to save space in a bunker.
Oh, yeah.
And Carlos Ramirez surviving with his daughter Sofia in a world where the atmosphere just escaped into space. And the surviving humans are left with only 58% gravity.
Right, just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Yeah, waiting for a lethal 100% snapback 8 years later. It's wild.
Sure.
But what do you think made this fiction so effective?
Well, what's fascinating here is it's human psychology, really. The document weaponized real terms. They used actual LIGO data terminology. They cited real classified NASA spending.
Oh, wow. So they mixed in actual fact.
Exactly. And most importantly, they attached it to a real upcoming event, the total solar eclipse that will be visible across the Northern Hemisphere on August 12th, 2026.
Right. The exact date of the supposed blackout.
Right. And historically, civilizations have always tied eclipses to catastrophes. It's hardwired into us. So human psychology was the real engine of this hoax.
That makes so much sense. It got so big that NASA actually had to issue a formal statement denying it.
Which is rare for them to do.
Extremely rare. But it begs the question, why did so many people buy it? And the sources point out that it's because our actual understanding of gravity has a massive glaring hole in it.
Yes. And to understand why it worked, we have to look at the physics of gravity.
Right.
Or, well, what we know of it.
Right.
So Isaac Newton figured out the math in 1687. But he had absolutely no idea how gravity acted across empty space. The mechanism was a total mystery to him.
He just knew that it did act.
Exactly. Then you get Albert Einstein's general relativity in 1915.
Right, and to make sure you listening grasp Einstein's model, it's like the classic analogy of a bowling ball on a trampoline, right? The ball curves the fabric of the trampoline and things roll toward it. It curves the fabric of space-time.
That is the exact way to visualize it. It's a geometric warping of space-time.
Which is just so cool. And I have to say, my absolute favorite part of this is the time dilation.
Oh, yeah.
The fact that time moves slower in stronger gravitational fields, like technically standing near heavy things makes you age slower. That is just absolute magic to me.
It is incredible. But here is the grand mystery. Einstein explained how gravity behaves perfectly, but nobody knows what it actually is.
Wait, really? We don't know what gravity is?
Not on a quantum level, no. Every other force has a particle, but we are missing the graviton particle for gravity.
Oh, graviton.
Right. And physicists have tried to figure out how to find it. In the sources, they quote physicist Freeman Dyson, who looked into building a detector for it.
And he found out it's basically impossible, right?
Yeah, because gravity is so weak, equipment massive enough to detect a single graviton would literally collapse into a black hole under its own weight.
Oh my God.
It destroys itself before it can even make the measurement.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. How can a force that holds the entire cosmos together, galaxies, stars, everything, how can it simultaneously be so weak?
It's the hierarchy problem.
Right. The paperclip analogy from the sources really hammered this home for me. You take a tiny, cheap refrigerator magnet, right, and it picks up a paperclip. Easily. In that moment, that tiny magnet is easily overpowering the gravitational pull of the entire planet Earth. The sources say gravity is 10 to the 40th power weaker than electromagnetism.
Yeah, a one with 40 zeros, it's staggering.
It doesn't make any sense, and because we don't understand it, it leaves this crack in the door.
Exactly. Because gravity naturally varies on Earth, too.
Oh, like in Canada, right?
Yes, there's a 0.004% drop in gravity in Canada's Hudson Bay. And there's a massive geoid low in the Indian Ocean where gravity is noticeably weaker.
That is wild.
So if it naturally fluctuates and we don't know exactly what it is, could it be artificially manipulated?
Right. Which takes us straight into the dark history of anti-gravity research, because if we don't fully understand gravity, someone out there is definitely trying to exploit that blind spot.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The military-industrial complex doesn't just ignore a gap in physics like that.
No, they lean into it. And the sources have this crazy, highly classified history. It starts in the 1950s with Thomas Townsend Brown.
The electrogravitics guy.
Yes. He discovered that applying high voltage to asymmetrical capacitors created thrust without fuel. And by 1956, major aerospace companies were totally investigating it. There were articles in aviation magazines.
And then just nothing.
Total silence, just wiped from the public record. And then it happens again in the 1990s with Eugene Podkletnov.
Right, the Russian physicist.
Yeah. He claimed a rotating superconducting disk reduced weight by 2%. He was shamed out of academia, but by 2001, he was suddenly describing a weaponized impulse gravity generator.
The pattern is undeniable.
And then there's Dr. Ning Li. This one blew my mind. She was doing DoD grants in 2001 for her work on rotating ions.
Top secret clearance.
Right, and then she just disappears for 12 years, completely vanishes. Then she makes a sudden return, only to die in a tragic car accident in 2021.
It's a very suspicious timeline, according to the sources.
Totally. And, I have to ask, if this is all just junk science, right? If it's all fake, why is it classified for 70 years? Why did companies like Boeing and Lockheed pour money into it?
You don't classify a mistake for 70 years.
Exactly.
You classify an advantage. And this brings in the extraterrestrial connection. The sources dive into Bob Lazar's claims.
The Area 51 guy.
Right. Specifically S4. He claimed they were reverse engineering craft using element 115, which he said manipulated gravity.
And years later, scientists actually synthesized element 115, moscovium, right?
Yes. And Lazar's description of how those craft moved by warping gravity rather than using thrust connects directly to the verified 2004 USS Nimitz encounter.
The Tic Tac UFO.
Exactly. The Nimitz object dropped 80,000 feet in under a second.
Which is just, I can't even fathom that.
It's over 12,000 G-forces. And it did this without wings, without exhaust, without burning up in the atmosphere.
So it's basically proof that someone, somewhere, is already manipulating gravity.
That's the argument the sources make, yeah. The physics of that maneuver are impossible otherwise.
So what does this all mean? Like, why keep it such a massive secret?
Well, the implications are terrifying, frankly. The country that cracks anti-gravity doesn't just get a silent, instant acceleration weapon. They make conventional war completely obsolete.
Right. You can't fight something that moves like that.
But more importantly, and this is the real motive for the cover-up, according to the documents, mastering gravity likely leads to zero-point vacuum energy.
Free energy.
Exactly. Limitless energy pulled right from the vacuum of space.
And that would change the entire world.
It would. It would modernize core nations overnight. It would end wars over resources. But it would be an absolute disaster for the people currently in power.
Because it would collapse the multi-trillion-dollar global energy economy.
Oil, gas, coal, all of it becomes worthless. So the people running those markets have every incentive to keep this technology hidden.
Wow. That is just, it's a lot to process.
It really is.
So, to summarize for you listening, we really went down the rabbit hole today. We started with this terrifying viral hoax about Earth losing its gravity for 7 seconds.
Project Anchor.
Right. And we saw how it weaponized our fear of the upcoming eclipse. Then we moved through the genuine scientific embarrassment that we literally still can't find the graviton.
That glaring blind spot in physics.
Yeah. And finally, we ended up in the murky, classified waters of anti-gravity research, suppressed technology, and global elites hoarding free energy.
It's a journey, for sure. And, I want to leave a listener with a final thought to mull over.
Oh, please do.
It builds on the biological horrors of that fictional snapback from the hoax. We spend so much time looking up at the stars, obsessing over UFOs and distant black holes, but we forget how intimately tethered we are to the ground.
Oh, that's a good point.
Our bones, our hearts, every biological system we have evolved in absolute submission to a force we cannot hold, cannot see, and fundamentally do not understand.
We are just completely at its mercy.
Exactly. So next time you drop something, don't just watch it fall.
Yeah.
Ask yourself what invisible hand is actually pulling it down and who might be trying to cut the strings.
Man, that is going to keep me up at night. Thank you so much for breaking all this down with me. And thank you, the listener, for joining us on this deep dive. We will catch you next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.